new babe.
So what's good, TMG fam? It's your boy L, and I'm back with another reaction. How y'all feel? Welcome back to the channel. Salute. So listen, man, we back with another Missing 411 series. I think I got it right this time. I'm pretty sure y'all will tell me. This one here, shout out to Mr. Ballin, man. If y'all haven't subscribed, make sure you go do so. Check him out. The next joint we're doing is part 6. Now, for all of y'all that say L don't listen, I see the comments, bro. A lot of y'all say, yo, L don't never go in order, man. And you're right, by the way. But I was actually trying to do this series, this Missing 411 series, in order. 1 through whatever, however many it is, right? So we last did number 4. So I was on my way to number 5 and couldn't find it. So I don't know what happened. Maybe he had to take the video down for some type of reasons, YouTube reasons or something like that. I don't know. But I just to let y'all know, I'm not purposely going out of order. I tried. All right. I get it, because I do. I be all over the place. But that's how my brain is, bro. So why would I be any different on here? My brain be all over the place. All right. So the next one is 3 people taken by forest creature. All right, if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button, join the fam, and do not forget to it's good. Run the lights up, baby. Run the lights up. Let's go.
Every year, hundreds of people go missing inside of national parks and forests all over North America. Of those hundreds of missing people, there's always a few that are particularly strange, that there isn't a rational explanation for how they went missing or where they were discovered. One man named David Politis, who's a former police detective, made it his mission to start investigating these strange disappearances, and after spending thousands of hours researching them, he saw that there were clusters of areas all over North America where lots of people were going missing under these strange circumstances, and no one was any bit closer to figuring out what happened to these people or why. David Politis began compiling what he was finding about all these strange cases and putting them into a book series that he calls Missing 411. I went out and purchased all of them. There's like 9 books because I'm totally fascinated by the Missing 411 phenomenon.
I said it wrong, didn't I? Didn't I say 411 at the beginning? I always get it wrong.
And I want to continue to read through all of the research that he's done and find some very interesting cases that I can share with you all on my YouTube channel. Today, I'm going to focus on 3 stories that all come out of Colorado. And in each story, it's as if someone or something literally picked these people up and moved them great distances to places that they would not have been able to access on their own. But before we get into today's Missing 411 stories, if you're a fan of Missing 411 or just everything strange, dark, and mysterious, then you've come to the right channel, because that's all I post about, and I upload 3, 4, even 5 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, I would encourage you to sneak into the like button's home and replace all of their family photos with pictures of Steve Buscemi. Also, please subscribe to my channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of my weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's stories. In 1981, Maurice Doc Dametz was an 84-year-old man living in Colorado. He was a lifelong minister, had a PhD in theology. He also had a blood condition, and he had arthritis in his knees that made it almost impossible for him to walk without assistance. He had always been really passionate about topaz hunting. He would go to these sites where you could dig into the ground and look for these rocks. When you broke them open, you could potentially find topaz. And he loved doing that. Because of his knees and because of his blood condition, he needed someone to go with him to walk him around to the different dig sites and to help him get back into the car and drive him back to his house. Doc had a friend named David McSherry. He wound up being the primary guy that would go with Doc anytime he went topaz hunting. On April 29th, 1981, Doc decides he wants to go topaz hunting. So he calls up David, and they load up David's car, and they head off to Pike National Forest, which was a spot they'd gone many times before. And they had this one area that they used to love going in particular called Devil's Head. Locals in the area claimed that that spot was actually haunted by evil spirits. But to Doc and to David, there was no indication that they bought into any of that, and they went there all the time. When they got there on April 29th at 10 a.m., they got out, they went to their favorite dig sites. David actually walked Doc down this hill to this one little clearing. Doc had a backpack with him full of the tools he used to dig out the different rocks. After David had walked Doc to this spot, David walked back up the hill towards their car and went about 50 yards away from where Doc was to his dig site. And over the next several hours, the two would work independent of one another, just digging for topaz. Periodically, David would look over and he'd make sure that he could see Doc and make sure Doc was okay. At 3...
I was about to say, like, how you, like, a person that you had to walk down there, literally escort down there, you leave and don't have no line of sight. I was hoping he said he kept a line of sight on him at least.
3:45 in the afternoon, David decides, all right, it's probably time to get going soon. And he pokes his head up and he looks in the direction of where Doc was supposed to be, and Doc's not there. He had just seen him about 15 minutes earlier, so he's not concerned. He knows it's only been a few minutes, and frankly, Doc can't really go anywhere. He can barely walk. And so he just kind of stands up and maybe tries to get a better look, and he's thinking, okay, maybe Doc stood up and got behind a tree to relieve himself, or maybe he kind of is just out of sight, and he starts walking down to the area to just go find Doc. But Doc isn't there, and neither is his backpack with all of his tools. And David's sitting there thinking, I guess Doc must have packed up and headed back to the car. But then David's thinking to himself, in order to go from this dig site up to the car, it means walking up a fairly steep embankment. And there's no way that Doc would have been able to do that without assistance. And so he's looking around the area thinking, is there any sign of something bad happening here? There's no blood. There's no sign of any sort of altercation that would have happened here. David certainly didn't hear anything going on near him. He didn't hear an animal attack or anything like that. So he thinks, okay, somehow he must have got up to the car. David walks up the embankment all the way to the car. Doc's not up there. David goes in the car and he starts honking the horn and yelling out for Doc. No response. As he's honking the horn, 3 motorists come down the road. They see David honking the horn, and so they say, hey, what's going on? David tells them, hey, I got my 84-year-old friend. I don't know where he went. He can't have gone far. Can you guys help me look for him? But after David and these motorists spend a couple of hours looking in this area and there's no sign of him, they end up calling the authorities. The police show up, and over the next week, there is this extensive search in this whole area that includes bloodhounds and hundreds of people. But despite this massive effort, nothing is ever found of Doc. He just vanishes. And so Doc's wife writes a letter to the governor of Colorado and just says, he can't have done this on his own. He can't have walked away on his own. Someone or something lifted him up and took him away. There was no response to this letter, and ultimately Doc's case was shut down. They stopped looking for him and assumed he had died. But when David...
Yeah, but the reason I don't think animal is because I think about, an animal either biting or ripping some piece of clothing off, or maybe it dragging you and your shoe coming off, or something, your bag would still be there. I'm not thinking animal on this one. What do y'all think? I'm not for an older person like that who could kind of make some type of noise. You would probably hear, he may not be able to move as fast, but to scream out, to let out a yell or something like that. Yeah, I'm not thinking animal.
Politis looked into this case and featured the Doc Dametz case on his documentary. They actually reopened the case, but as of right now, there's no new additional details about the whereabouts of Doc Dametz. To this day, we don't know what happened to him.
Yeah, I'm not thinking animal.
In 2014, Jim McGrogan was a 39-year-old medical doctor who was living in Indiana with his wife and his 2 kids. He was widely regarded as a very loving husband and devoted father, and everybody seemed to just love this guy. Jim was in phenomenal shape. He had run marathons, triathlons. He loved being in the outdoors, hiking, rock climbing, snowshoeing, skiing. That was Jim's happy place. And so in early March 2014, Jim decides he wants to plan a trip with some friends to go hiking in Colorado. And so he begins planning out where they're going to go hiking, and he finds this amazing trail right opposite the very famous Vail ski resort. Even though Jim was very competent in the outdoors, he would take a survival class and an avalanche preparedness class before he left for Colorado, just to show...
There's an avalanche preparedness class? Like, I just couldn't see myself being in that class, bro. Because I'd be sitting there looking at everybody like, yo, do we really want to subject ourselves to a possible avalanche? be in an area where there's possible avalanche. Now, maybe that's something that is just normal that they give out for anything, or you just being in the area. So, I wouldn't know. I've never been around a mountain like that. So, but for me hearing that from the outside, I don't want to be in no type of situation like that. I wouldn't survive good.
Show his wife that he wasn't taking any chances, that he would be well prepared in case the worst were to happen on this trip. About 2 weeks later, he's in Colorado and he heads to a ski shop where he rents a split snowboard as well as loads up on all the supplies that you might need for being in the outdoors. Early the next day, Jim and his friends arrive at the trailhead. Jim, in his backpack, had his cell phone. He also had an extra cell phone battery. He had a great GPS. In addition, he had loads of food and water. He had his split snowboard. He has his avalanche beacon. He's got extra clothing. I mean, this guy is well outfitted for this trip. So they start on this hike, and by 10 a.m. that morning, the rest of the group is feeling tired and wants to take a break. Jim doesn't want to take a break. He's in amazing shape and he wants to keep going. So he says, hey guys, I'm going to walk just a little bit farther up and I'll meet you at our next planned stop. No one bats an eye.
Bro, when the group says no, everybody needs to leave, fam. When the group says they're tired, everybody needs to be tired. That branching off from the group and was like, all right, well, y'all go back to the hotel. I'm going to finish this and then I'll meet y'all there. It never goes good after that, bro. No, we come together, we leave together. That's what we need to start practicing.
Because Jim is like this total stud. He knows what he's doing. And they're like, all right, go ahead. We'll see you up there. Once the group is well rested, they stand back up and they keep walking. They get to that first stop and Jim's not there. They think, okay, we were sitting there for a little while. I'm sure he just went to the next planned stop because they had planned stops all along the route. The trail they were on, because it had snowed significantly that winter and lots of people had been on this trail, the trail itself was totally packed down to the dirt. So it was very easy to identify this trail. Anywhere there wasn't trail was covered in snow. And so if you were walking this trail, it would be really easy to stay on it. Also, if you were to deviate from the trail and start walking away, it would be really obvious because people would see your footprints leaving the trail. But as Jim's friends are making their way up this trail and not seeing Jim at each of these subsequent stops, they don't see any footprints leaving the trail. So they just figure he must have gone all the way to the end. He's just way ahead of us. But by 5 p.m., when they made it all the way up to the top where they planned on stopping and turning around, Jim wasn't there, and they hadn't passed him on the way up, and they hadn't seen any footprints or any ski tracks or anything to indicate that someone had left the path. And so very worried about Jim, they called the authorities. Over the next 5 days, a massive search is launched in this area, including 3 helicopters that scoured an 18-mile square radius. They had scent sniffing dogs out there. They had all these very experienced mountaineers combing the area, but they couldn't find any sign of him. And again, because of all the snow outside of that trail they were on, the helicopter just searched up and down that trail looking for indications that someone had left the trail, looking for those footprints or ski tracks just off that trail they were on, and there weren't any. There was no sign that anyone had left the trail at any point. Yet Jim was gone. The authorities, friends, family, everybody's baffled, but they're thinking to themselves, Jim's a really competent outdoorsman. He has a working GPS, and they checked their cell phones. That whole area they were in, they had cell phone reception. So they're thinking to themselves, we don't know what's going on, but I'm sure he's going to turn up at some point.
Everybody should be required to wear tracking devices when you go out. They should hand you something that has a way of tracking you. You know what I mean? Handing you something so they can track you, know right where your location is if you go down, sort of like pass devices. You know what I mean? And the fire service, you have strapped on. Now, I don't know what they use now, but when I was there, right upon your pack, right, with your air bottle on it, your pack that you pull over your shoulders, right on there would be what they call a pass device. And if you fell down and you sat still for a moment, it would start to beep. And if you stayed still for a long period of time, then it would go off without any movement. And that would alert everybody to say, okay, somebody's down, we need to find them. And you can follow, you can go towards the sound. People need those out there in those situations, man. They need pass devices and some type of tracking device, bro.
So they're thinking to themselves, we don't know what's going on, but I'm sure he's going to turn up at some point. 20 days after Jim went missing, his body is discovered by 2 hikers 7 kilometers away from the trail he had been on when he went missing. He had died from significant head trauma as well as a broken femur. It looked like he had fallen from a really great height, but it wasn't entirely clear where he had actually fallen from. He was found with just leggings and a shirt on, no jacket and no boots, and his boots were nowhere to be found. His backpack was next to him, and inside of it was his GPS that worked and his cell phone that worked. He even had an extra battery for his cell phone. Yet at no point had he tried to use his cell phone over the duration of the time he had been out there. He also had lots of food and water and additional clothing. He had a tent, but it looked like none of it had been touched since he packed it originally. And then strangest of all is there were no footprints or ski tracks leading up to either where he was or any of the surrounding areas. There were no tracks to show how he actually got where he got. It's as if he had been lifted off the trail 7 kilometers away and dropped where he was. When the exact location of where he was found was communicated back to the authorities, the helicopter pilots who had been involved in that initial 5-day search said that we looked at that area multiple times and he wasn't there. So at some point after those 5 days, Jim had found a way to land 7 kilometers away in this random place where there's no footprints that lead to it, no tracks, no anything. We know he had a working cell phone and a working GPS, and we know that he didn't make it to this spot where he ultimately was found in the first 5 days. So at a minimum, what was he doing in those first 5 days? Why wasn't he using his cell phone to communicate what was going on? Why wasn't he using his GPS to get back to safety? Why didn't he use the supplies in his backpack to save his life?
Right.
Why did he take his boots off? And then how did he wind up in the location he was in? Because there was no tracks that would have led to that spot. In 1958, Bobby Bizup was a 10-year-old living in Colorado. He was almost completely deaf, so he wore a hearing aid, and he came from a family that was devoutly Catholic. That summer, Bobby's family decided to send him to a Catholic camp for boys. It was located at the St. Malo Church inside of Rocky Mountain National Park. The camp itself was situated at the base of Mount Meeker. Anytime the boys were up the mountain, which was pretty steep, they could always look down and see this camp. In addition, there was this stream that fed right by the camp. So if they could just get to the stream anytime they were up in the mountain, they could follow it all the way down and get back to the camp. This was something that they told all of the boys in case they got lost up in the mountain. On August 15th, around 6 p.m., Bobby was a little ways up from the camp, fishing along that river. And one of the camp counselors was making his way up to try to get all the boys to come back down for dinner. This camp counselor would say that he clearly saw Bobby recognize that it was time to come back down, it was time for dinner. He clearly saw Bobby turn and start walking down towards the camp. At which point the counselor turned his back on Bobby and he too began walking down towards the camp, which was not very far away. When the counselor got to the camp and turned back around though, Bobby was gone. And so the counselor starts immediately tracing his steps back to try to find Bobby, but he can't find him anywhere. The counselor goes and gets a number of the other counselors to come help him find Bobby. After about 30 minutes, no sign of Bobby. He's just gone. The camp counselors are looking around thinking, how is this possible? He was literally right there. He started walking, he was right behind me. How could he have gotten lost in such a short amount of time and in an area where he could literally see the camp and was actually on the river that leads right back to the camp? It didn't make any sense. The counselors alerted authorities and this massive search is launched to find Bobby. Over 300 people come out, including people from the military. It's this huge search. And
watch, they say he like a mile away or something from where he at, right? All I know is if I take my kids to a camp, they better be the same way when I come back to pick them up. Better not be nothing wrong, fam. You'll be scared to be like, oh, we need to call his parents. People gonna be like, nah, you don't want to call his parents. We need to find them first. Exactly. That lunatic is coming. That's what they be referring to, as referring to me as the lunatic dad.
Nothing is found of this boy. He's completely gone. 10 days after he went missing, they had to call off the search because there was absolutely no sign of this child. Even after the search ended, many of the camp counselors continued to, in their off time.
And that's a tough call to make. You got a child out there somewhere and that call off a search? I'd never want to be in that position to have to make that call.
This child. Even after the search ended, many of the camp counselors continued to, in their off time, scour the area around the camp to look for Bobby. And a year later, 3 camp counselors would actually find him. 3 camp counselors decided to go to a very hard to access area that had been searched previously, but they felt like it was the one spot that needed a little bit more attention. And it was 5 kilometers west of the camp and almost 800 yards up a fairly steep incline. This is a hard to access area, but they climbed their way up there, and sure enough, even though this area had been searched before, they found Bobby's hearing aid, bits of his clothing, and some of his bones. They didn't find any more of his remains, and no one knows what actually happened to him. But it really makes you wonder, what happened after the camp counselor turned his back on Bobby? It's as if someone scooped him up and flew him away. And even if he had intentionally run away, it would have been very difficult for a 10-year-old to get to that particular location where he was found. And to what end? Why would he have wanted to get up there? And so, like many of the other missing 411 cases, we are left with a series of questions and very few answers. So I'd love to get your theories as to what's caused.
What animal could it possibly be, y'all? What animal can move that swiftly, quietly, not leave no tracks? Neither did the old guy, the guy after him, or the kid, Bobby. Neither of them made a sound to where the people around them can hear. So, what animal is doing that? I'm not thinking of a bear. I'm not thinking of a mountain lion. I'm not thinking of, like, what could do that? What's doing that? I can't think of nothing, bro. That's why my first dismiss was an animal. I can't think of anything. Nothing. I got nothing. What's going to drag him way up there? Like Mr. Ballin said, man, someone would have had to fly him probably up there. What's doing that? I don't know, man. It's completely got me stumped, bro. I have no idea. No idea. It's like a pterodactyl came through, and even they make loud noises. You know what I'm saying? Like, what could it have been? That's going to mess with me, man. I'm going to be racking my brain trying to figure out what could do that. I don't know. Well, listen, y'all get at me in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Let me know what y'all think. You know, maybe we got some hills have eyes people out there living in these caves and stuff, and they run through and they snatch you up and take you up in these caves, and they got ways to get up to those spots from inside the cave. That could be possibly what it is. As far-fetched as it may sound, that could be what it is, bro. But we don't know what's living in them things. I don't know. Yeah, I see where my brain is at right now. So y'all get at me in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think, and stick around and stay tuned, man. Until the next reaction of my piece, y'all stay solid. Hey.